Welcome to the Fit Dad Club podcast. My name is Travis Jones. I'm here with Jason Barrett. And today we're talking all things training. How much should you train? Should you train too little, too much? How to get muscle mass, how to retain muscle when you're in a fat loss phase. That's what we're going through today. So tune in, guys. And like I said, I'm here with Jace. How has your week been, Jace?
Pretty good. Amy had a bit of a fever. She has been up and down, but she's now kind of come good from there, which is nice. But nothing worse than a little one who can't tell you how they're feeling like shit. But guess what? She's come good. She's on the other side. She's happy and ready to play, and I'm happy and ready to train. We've had our little trials the last couple of weeks. But what about you, Trav? How's things going? You've been off training for a little bit.
Yeah, man. Like same as, that's what we're talking about, training, right? Like my training's been down, especially my running. I still have the Gold Coast Marathon this weekend that I'm going to do, but we'll see how I do it or if I do it. I'll wait till Saturday until I make the decision. I've had a couple of staph infections, all the rest of it. But I'm feeling like 80%, man. Like I think, it's what should you do when you're training is a big thing because it's happened to me. It's happened to you. Do you lose muscle mass? And, for a lot of the guys out there, we sometimes emphasize the importance of training whilst in a fat loss phase, especially for beginners, right? Especially for beginners. So, when I say beginners, like you're coming back into training after, 1-2 years, you haven't been lifting much. I'd still classify you as a beginner because you're going to have some beginner kind of newbie gains or, when we look at it, it's like gaining muscle mass that you've lost, you'll gain that back. So you still will fall into that, like a little bit of a beginner category before the beginner phase will be shorter, but you will gain those faster gains at the start again. So it was definitely something that we want to chat about. And also some of our guys, if they can't get all the sessions in, sometimes it goes into like an all or nothing mindset and they're like, oh, what's the point of eating well? Or what's the point of doing all this other stuff if I can't get, 100% of my training sessions in? So I think, it's important to highlight these factors. It's important to, make sure you can try your best to do the minimum viable effort. I think that's the biggest thing. And as long as you get the minimal viable effort in, then everything else is a positive. Maybe you might not gain muscle mass, you might just retain it. And I think it's making sure that there's a very clear distinction that we diet to lose fat and we train to preserve or gain muscle mass. So I think it's making sure we understand that distinction. You're not training to drop fat. Like that's not what you're doing. You're not trying to burn calories to lose fat. No, you're dieting to lose fat and you train to preserve muscle mass or gain muscle mass. So I think it's really like understanding that, to the nth degree. And if you miss a training session, that's completely fine if you're in a fat loss phase because it means you're not going to lose all your muscle mass at all. You just burn like 250 less calories because that's all you're doing in your training and it's not going to impact your fat loss really much at all. And I think that is the biggest thing I want most people to understand.
I think it's the visceral nature of how you feel after a training session that a lot of people crave and a lot of people, I guess, get too dialed in my opinion. Like I've spoken to a number of my guys who are like, I haven't been able to train this week. Like, I really want to get back into training. Really, I promise I will. Like, I'll get back on. I'm like, look, we can get back into training. That's all good. But track your fucking food first. Like focus on your intake and your food. It's like don't apologize to me for not getting your training and apologize to me for not tracking your fucking food and not being aware of what's going in your mouth. And this is a concept that I need everyone to understand when it comes to food. It is a lot easier to not eat 500 calories than it is to burn 500 calories.
Yeah.
I don't care what your watch says. All of those fucking watches and activity trackers are highly inaccurate. There's a reason we don't use them for calculating any kind of calorie burn because you should not. And if you're not in the program, you won't know about this. But if you are, you'll know. We don't use activity trackers to be like, oh, well, this is my calorie goal. Now I can eat an extra 600 calories because I burned an extra 600 calories today, according to my watch. No, we don't fucking use that. We just set a target. We hit that target regardless of the amount of activity we do. The amount of activity will help us either scale up or scale down our fat loss, but it's not the be all and end all. So just remember, it is a lot easier to not eat 500 calories. Just keep your mouth shut, right? And not eat 500 calories than it is to burn 500 calories. But it's because there's that visceral nature of like, oh, I'm sweaty and I'm tired and I'm exhausted. I must have done really well. I'm burning the fat. It's like, no, the fat burn, and this is an analogy I've used time and time again, is the workout is like doing a burnout up and down the street, right? yeah, you burn a bit of petrol, you burn a bit of fuel doing that, and then you just park your car in the garage and you leave it off all day long. That's the equivalent of going and doing a workout and then not hitting your steps and, eating too much. It's like, cool, nothing's going to change. If you leave your car idling in the garage all day long, just going and going and going, it's going to be burning a lot more fuel than just doing that sort of one big workout. So when you think about your body, you've got to think about it in the whole context. And you've got to realize that workouts are important, but you're not going to lose any appreciable muscle mass from 4 to 6 weeks of not training. And the muscle mass that you do lose will come back within a couple of weeks of training again. Like, it doesn't take long for you to regain what you've lost. As someone who's gone through back injuries where I was like lying on the couch for fucking a week, like I'm still gaining my strength back in a lot of my movements, but my muscle mass hasn't really appreciably changed. And I didn't blow out in weight because I kept on top of my food. So that's the big thing just to remember when it comes to training. It's not the be all and end all. It is a good feeling, and I highly recommend, obviously, training is far better than not training. But I've got guys losing 2, 3, 4 kilos in the first couple of weeks and they're not able to train because, life happens and shit happens, and they've just hit their nutrition and still lost the weight, which is great. It's awesome. It's not going to be ideal for, to go 20 weeks without training and not eating enough. But if you can get a couple of sessions in here and there, that is usually plenty. So we want to take training in the positive, and we want to say, cool, if I can hit a session, that is a positive and that does make me feel good. But we want to have it not affect us so much on the negative, right? So it's like, if we hit a session, that's awesome, and that does make us feel good and that makes us more motivated. But we want to make sure that if we miss a session for whatever reason, like a reason that's out of our control, not just, I was a little bitch and it was cold outside and I wanted to stay home. I've never met a gym where you go into and you start exercising. Like, I go in with my jumper every time and I take the jumper off like immediately almost. Like after my first set, I'm like, okay, cool, I'm warm now. But if you are, someone who, if you miss a session, starts to get you down, we've got to take away that negative side of it. It's like, if you hit a session, that's awesome. If you miss a session for, kids are sick, right? Oh, my wife was in hospital. Yeah, fucking, that's a priority. That's cool. Right? Like, you can miss a session for that and it's not going to affect your gains. As long as you've got all of your other shit in a row, training doesn't have to be the biggest thing from like, oh, I missed it, now my plan's out the window, because it's just not true.
I completely agree, mate. Even I think about one of my boys, he lost over 12 kilos in 12 weeks and didn't even step into the gym. All we did was try, because his life was super hectic when he started with us, and he openly said that his business is like growing really fast, like young kids, and not huge amounts of family support around those kids, so when he's home, he's trying to help his partner as much as he can. So like, I need the minimal effective dose to try not to lose heaps of muscle mass and actually lose weight, so I feel better, right? Because the biggest thing is like losing weight, fat, so he feels better. So he lost over 12 kilos in 12 weeks just by focusing on his diet, and all he was doing is push-ups, sit-ups, and squats. We'd phase that up over the 12 weeks because at the start he couldn't do heaps. And we phased it up to doing, 10, 15 rounds. And he was doing like 15, 20 minutes in there, 5 days a week. But I'm not saying that approach is for everyone. I think there's somewhere between a him and someone who thinks they need to hit the gym 6 days a week to, get the best result. But, you can just do body weight to a certain extent, especially as a beginner, before now we're getting into the gym with him. Because, you'll get to a point where it's like, getting into the gym is important now to continue to progress, to get that muscle definition, to lose those last little bits of body fat. So I think it's understanding that. It's like, if you're at the start, the amount of effort you need to put into this is so much smaller. If you're in the middle, you've been training for somewhere between 6 months to 18 months, still new, but you're sort of past a very fresh new stage, then you need to hit weights a couple of times a week and you need to put some intensity into those weights. And then if you've been training really solid for the last 18 months, 2 years, it's like, probably 3 times a week is something where we want to be on the minimum side of things. But none of that was 5 or 6 times a week. If we want to start to focus on, I want to grow my arms bigger because I feel like they're a lagging body part, okay, the 5th session has to be another arm session. So now we start focusing on frequency of muscle group and sets and reps and all the rest of it. But I feel like most of us in listening to this podcast aren't focusing on, growing bigger arms, and we're more focused on growing a smaller gut. And it's making sure we're getting a tighter midsection, making sure we're increasing our energy levels. It's decreasing body fat. It's putting on a little bit of muscle mass so we feel more confident and we fit our shirts a little bit better. And with that, 3 to 4 times a week, I think that's a sweet spot, for most people. And, you know, I lift personally like 3 to 4 times a week. You know, I've gone down to lifting when I've been sick, down to, you know, once a week. And that hasn't affected me at all. If you're in a calorie deficit and you're trying to lose body fat and we want to retain muscle mass, if you're doing a full body session 1 time a week and you're training, key here, you're training around 2 reps from failure, so you're getting enough stimulus from the workouts that's going to create that little bit of micro trauma in the muscle, you're not going to be losing muscle mass. As long as you're not in some huge deficit, which means you'll lose muscle mass either way if you're training 5 times a week or 1 time a week.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's understanding your training load and your training capacity for your goals, because you could also do like a small workout every day, right? We've talked about this quite a while ago. You could do, it's all about the weekly amount of volume. Just because you can't do, the entire workout in one session, you could break that up over 2 days, over 3 days, right? You could get in and do what you can and just smash it out. Like a lot of people have rules around what is a perfect or a great workout need to be. And it might be like push-ups and pull-ups and just rotating between those, or push-ups and pull-down. Like, you know, if you can't do that many pull-ups at the moment, like that might be just what you do. You rotate through that and like doing a thruster for like 10, 20 minutes. You'll be fucked. You'll get enough done. You might only get 3 or 4 sets per muscle, but that's enough. And then you could do that 2 times a week. And guess what? That would be enough. Or you could do, you could even do like the push-up challenge, right? You could do a couple of sets to failure of push-ups every single day. Same thing with sit-ups, same thing with, lunges or something like that. You could do as much of that as you could in a set time, 10, 15 minutes. And that would often be enough for most people to continue to see growth, to continue to either see growth or maintain their results, but also just get that little endorphin feeling, because that's kind of the other side of why we do what we do, is because it feels good, right? It feels good to train. You feel great afterwards. You feel like you've got a pump. You feel like you're doing something. Like those are good reasons to train. So it's not something that you should completely avoid, but you've got to be, realistic with your time capacity and also make a plan that fits within that. Don't set yourself up for failure by going, I'm going to train 6 times a week, when you fucking know damn well you do not have the capacity, or your wife knows you don't have the capacity, but you are living in la la land like, oh yeah, I can do this. And your wife's like, you can't. You haven't seen the schedule, right? As a lot of dads are guilty of. But it's just about knowing when it comes to training, like what is your load for capacity? What is your load for recovery as well? Like for example, when I was first getting in, I might do very short sessions for a very minimal amount of stuff because of my back, right? I wasn't going crazy. I wasn't overloading it. Trav, from a systemic recovery standpoint at the moment, not going to be doing a hell of a lot, right? You've got to make sure he keeps it nice and chill, because your whole body has to recover. So you've got to take these things in with context, and you've got to be aware of like why you're feeling the way that you're feeling from like a endorphin standpoint. Usually it's because of training, but if you're feeling like you're run down, you've also got to modulate your volume from that too. So it's a multifaceted thing. And for me, it's like training is one of the last steps that really needs to be perfected for a lot of guys. It's usually around their sleep and their recovery and their time management, their emotional management, and their food management. Because if you're not managing your food, doesn't matter how much you train. You've heard the saying, you're not going to out-train a bad diet. But if you can get a couple of sessions in a week, awesome, amazing. If you can get a couple of sets of a couple of exercises in a week, awesome, amazing. But just don't have it be the be-all, end-all.
Yeah, it's decreasing or getting rid of the all or nothing mentality. I think that is the biggest thing that we need people to do, and making sure they can embrace the minimal viable effort mentality, especially as dads. And some dads have all the time in the world, some don't. And I think as long as you're trying to hit your minimal viable effort, which could be like 5 by 10 squats, and you work up, you do 5 working sets on Mondays, and that's your workout. And it's like Tuesdays you're doing it for bench, and Wednesdays you're doing it for deadlifts, and you have a gym in your garage, and you're just doing like 15 minutes. Like, dude, that's okay. You know what it's better than doing? Nothing at all. That's completely fine. If you can then go like do some squats and then follow it by some, supersetting for 4 sets, some lunges and some RDLs, then cool. That's even better. You want to do that, and you've got a leg press at home, and you want to pump out 3 sets of 12 or 4 sets of 12 on that, get a bit more volume in. Hey, even better again. But, just because you can't do it all doesn't mean you don't do it at all. I think that's a big thing. So it's understanding that and knowing that our training, just so we can really hammer this home, it burns up to a maximum of 4 to 6% of your daily calorie output, right? So you might have used like a MyFitnessPal, or you are at the moment, or some form of calorie tracking device in the past. And, you start tracking, your training in there. You might have gone for a run, or you track your training. It's like, now you can eat, you were going to eat 2,000 calories, but with your calorie burn, now you can eat 2,700 calories. Like, that is a lie. Like, it is a complete lie. Just hit the calories that you are currently on. If you did a bigger training session and you says you burn more calories, then fantastic. You're in a bigger deficit and you'll lose fat faster. Don't start altering your calories because MyFitnessPal said so. And it's only 4 to 6%. Like, your steps on a daily basis have more of an impact than the training that you do on your fat loss. Right? They just do, because they have a bigger calorie burn by doing extra steps. The biggest one, as Jay said earlier, is just stopping putting your hand to your mouth, right? That has the biggest effect of a calorie deficit above all.
Fork downs.
Fork downs, exactly. 5 sets of fork down and you'll be good, instead of 5 sets of pull-ups. I think, the fork downs are definitely more of an important exercise. So I think if you can't get your training in, what we would say is, okay, I really need you to dial your nutrition in then. We really need to hit our protein goal. We really want to hit our calorie goal. And if we're not losing that 1% total body weight because we can't get enough output on a weekly basis, then we just decrease our input slightly to maintain the deficit that we're trying to look for to lose that 1% total body weight per week.
Exactly right. At the end of the day, it's a numbers game, and training is an input. It's an input that often doesn't make the biggest difference, or as big of a difference as people think. But it's just about changing the scope and the reason why you're training, right? When I think about training, I think, all right, cool, I'm preserving muscle mass, I'm getting a pump, or even if you want to think mentally, like, I'm building up my guns, right? Like, I've said this to heaps of guys before, who cares what your weight is? If you look like Chris Hemsworth, I don't think anyone's going to complain about what they look like, So
Exactly.
if you can, just get as much, like, I could weigh 120 kilos, but if I look like Chris Hemsworth, fuck yeah, I'll take that, man. The biggest thing for me is just making sure you have the right intention behind why you're training, or just shifting your focus of why you're training. Because then it's like, if I can't train, training is a thing that helps me lose fat. Going to the gym, I go to the gym to lose weight. Like, this is this mentality people have, and this link people have. I go to the gym to lose weight. I go to the gym to lose weight. No, you don't. You go to the gym to build more muscle mass, to build your bone density, to build your health, your aerobic capacity, to build. Right? It's about supporting your body and your structures. It's not about like just going there to run on the treadmill till you fucking drop, right? That's not the reason why we want to go to the gym, right? You can run outside. It's better, fresh air, right? And way better than just sitting in a room looking at a screen. The biggest thing for me is knowing why, right? And then shifting that why. So it's like, why do I go to the gym? I'm going to the gym to build. I'm going to the gym to increase my capacity, to get fitter, to get stronger. And then it goes, okay, cool. Well, if at the moment I'm in a fat loss phase and I go to the gym, I managed to go to the gym. Awesome. I'm building that capacity. I'm getting fitter. I'm getting stronger. But it's not like I have to go to the gym to lose weight, go to the gym to lose weight. Like, it's removing that association and remembering the purpose of your training. And for me, that is the big purpose of your training. It should be to build strength. It should be to build muscle. It should be to build capacity, and to be a fitter, better, stronger version of you. It's not going to be the be all and end all from just a fat loss perspective. Like, that's the biggest thing I want everyone to understand is just that. So when you miss a training session, cool. I missed out on getting a little bit stronger this week, or maybe I even needed the recovery to get stronger, because you grow more on your rest days than you do on your training days, right? There is a certain point where you need to actually take a break from training to give your body the ability and the capacity to recover. Because if you don't, then it's just going to fucking you're going to run yourself into the ground, and that is not good for anyone. That means you can't train further. So you've got to give yourself those deload periods, those abilities. Yeah, Trav's laughing. You've got to give yourself those deload periods, those abilities for you to recover from the training load that you've given. Otherwise, you're not going to ever sort of be able to inch your way forward. So remember why you train, and shift the focus of why you train away from to lose fat and towards gaining muscle, getting stronger, building capacity, et cetera, et cetera.
And I've been guilty of this a lot. I use training as a means to feel good. So it's my coping mechanism. Now, but then what happens is when I don't train, then I lose my coping mechanism. I definitely have an addictive personality. I don't drink for a variety of reasons, alcohol that is. One of them is I have an addictive personality that probably, if I drank and took drugs, I'd be in jail. I just know who I am. I think it's good to know who you are. But at the same time, I changed my personality, then I took up training. And that is my addiction. And I use that as a domino effect as far as, again, we've talked about, it's like, if I train, I eat well. If I eat well, then I sleep well, and the list goes on, and I feel good. Now, when I get sick or get injured because I can't train, then because I don't have that initial domino, because it is my coping mechanism to knock over the other dominoes, then my life my shit hits the fan in my life. Because I just don't have that initial coping mechanism. I'm not as a good enough person because I relied on it for my endorphin release. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't look towards training to give you those endorphins. Like, that's a positive thing, but we shouldn't rely on them as a coping mechanism. And for me, I've had to try and grow and learn that, hey, there's other ways, or just because you don't train, it doesn't mean you feel bad. And because you feel bad, then you try and eat food to cope, to feel good, or do anything else. That's why people watch porn, take drugs, eat like food that tries to make them feel good, just to change their emotional state. So if we don't get the thing we used to, we look to another thing that changes our state. When in reality, we need to look internally and go, why am I doing this? And look at the triggers, try and remove the triggers, and also understand, because I'm currently, if you're run down, if you're injured or you're sick, what's another way that you can, change your emotional state, whether it be meditation or going for a walk, because it's not going to give you too much of a load on your body. That's still going to give you the outcome you're looking for emotionally, to make sure you're stable to then, and you have to be emotionally stable to stick to a diet long term. So emotionally stable to stick to your nutrition so you can be motivated to be disciplined. And I think that is a big thing for us to not go, because I am the biggest, I was and have been at times, like the biggest culprit of this. It's like, if I don't train, I just don't eat as well. And I've had to really work on that myself. So if anyone's out there who is similar, then it's okay. You're not alone. But it's also understanding, it's like, you need to train because it does make you feel good. But if you don't train, that doesn't mean you don't feel good.
Yeah, like, it doesn't have to be a necessity. It's not an either or. It's not the only thing, but it's definitely a good catalyst, right? Like, even if it's just going for a fucking run around the block, like, it doesn't take much for you to get those endorphins flowing. So don't gatekeep what training should or needs to be. Don't gatekeep, like, all right, my training has to look this way and it has to do this. It's like, train because you want to. Train because it makes you feel good. And look, there's times when, from a micro perspective, yes, you don't want to train. Yes, I don't really feel like going to the gym today. You're going to feel better after fucking 10 minutes. Like, that. So just give yourself that 10 minutes to get in there. Like, if you're not training because I don't 100% feel like going to the gym, or I don't like it because, lifting weights, I don't want to gain too much muscle. First of all, you're not going to gain too much muscle. I've been training for 10 years. I still don't have enough muscle. I don't look like I've been training for 10 years. So it's not going to happen to you overnight where you're just going to magically fucking put on all this muscle. Like, I put on muscle really easy. No, you fucking don't, right? You get fat, and the fat is not muscle. So it's just important for people to be aware of, like, why do they train? What are the big picture reasons behind why you're training? What is the focus from, like, a shorter term perspective as well? It's just be aware of the actual tactical impacts of training on your body, and the also mentally as well. So just be aware of those things. Don't be too caught up in, if I don't train, then I've failed, or I haven't done, good enough, or whatever. It's just bullshit, right? So you don't need to be thinking that way.
If you are sick and you're sick for 2 weeks and you don't train, you don't lose muscle mass, guys. You might decrease glycogen inside your muscle, and so you don't feel as pumped or as swole, or however word you want to put it in there. I don't know what the young kids call it these days, but it's fine. Like 4 to 6 weeks without training, completely fine until you start losing muscle mass. 2 weeks because you're sick, doesn't matter whatsoever. You didn't lose muscle mass. When you come back, I'm not as strong. No, you're just overcoming sickness. That's all it is. And you're just getting back into the rhythm. And that's completely fine as well. So if we look at it, guys, to give you some, just some focus points, worst case scenario, you train 1 day a week and you're going to hold muscle mass if you're doing a full body session whilst in a deficit. And that's all you can do. That's fine. And try and push in some push-ups, sit-ups, squats, pull-ups in there at home around it. Give yourself 5 minutes, do a circuit. Give yourself 10 minutes, do a circuit. You'll feel good from it, and you're going to feel a little bit of a pump, so you feel good again. If you're a new person to training and you want to try and get muscle mass, 3 times a week is all you need. Right? That's all you need to gain muscle mass. As you progress and you go from 6 to 12 months, 4 times a week in the gym, that's what we need. Like we do. And if we're trying to focus on specific body parts, frequency starts to matter. So how many times you train that body part in a week. So you're 18 months in, you're like, hey, I want a bigger chest or bigger arms or whatever it is. Yep, we start needing to train our arms twice a week, 72 hours apart, increasing sets, reps, volume to that muscle group and frequency because we're training them twice a week. And that matters to increase that muscle group. But I think like a lot of us aren't in that latter stage. I think a lot of us in the starting or secondary phases, but we think we are in the latter stage when the reality is you aren't. So focus on just trying to, get the 2 to 3 full body sessions in a week. If you need to, and you're being consistent, get the 4th one in a week, get it done, feel great. And if you can't get the whole session in, just tell yourself that's okay. Because some stimulus is better than no stimulus.
100%. Just get something in. I think that's the big thing for this podcast. Get something in. If you can get something done, awesome. If you can't, no stress. Don't make it the reason why you throw the baby out with the bathwater.
And you don't need to do on the very other, further aspect of things or other side of the scale, you don't need 1.5-hour sessions. If you're just trying to lose 20 kilos of fat, 45 minutes is fine. It is completely fine. That's enough time 3 to 4 times a week to get it done. If you're doing anything longer than that and you're following a structured program, you're like, now I have to do another 45 minutes of cardio, 7 days. It's you don't. You're wasting time. There is also, there's minimal viable effort, but on the other side of things, there's junk volume that doesn't actually help you whatsoever at all and just delays your recovery and slows down your progress. So don't do shit for the sake of doing shit to think it will just help. Another 5 sets will be better. It won't be better. It just won't. So I think it's not trying to go, if I do more is better. More is not always better. More sleep is not better if you're sleeping 8 or 9 hours. You don't need 12 hours of sleep a night. You don't. More food is never better if you're trying to lose weight. More training is never better if you're already hitting the volume you need to hit. So more is not better and less is not better. So it's trying to hit the minimal viable effort. And if you can hit your full program, then hit your full program. And that is the sweet spot we want to be in. Somewhere between minimal viable effort to full program. If you can sit in that sweet spot and you'll get crazy results. It's not about getting results overnight, it's getting results over time in a sustainable, consistent manner. And that's what dads need.
100%. You've got to operate within your constraints. You've got to not go too fucking nuts on focusing on trying to do a million different things. Just execute on what you already know you need to do and execute on it well, and you will get the results that you want. And that's as simple as it needs to be.
And that's it for today's podcast, guys. That is the Fit Dad Club podcast, talking about training. If you need some help to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be, then go to fit-dad.club, book in a call with us, and we can have a chat about how we can help you lose 10, 20, 30 kilos and get you back to your best version of you so you can be and feel like a great role model for your family and your kids. If you want to rate the podcast or leave a review on Spotify, iTunes, whatever you're looking at this, or on YouTube, give us a comment, then please do so because it helps us help more dads. That is it for me for today, and I'll see you next Monday. Jace, thank you for today as well.
No worries. Looking forward to checking in with you guys. Peace out.